What's up, everyone? Franco here from Frank Analysis. Please like this video, share this video, and subscribe to this channel so you can help small independent channels like this grow. I am also now on Rockfin, so please make sure you sign up. You can have a free account, follow me, or you can be a premium member by subscribing to me or somebody else in independent media, and then you get all the premium content of all the content creators that are on Rockfin. You'll find Jimmy Dore, you'll find The Last American Vagabond, The Combo Couch, Nico House. You'll find us all there. So Rockfin is the move. Make sure you're there. Now, this news that I'm going to talk about shouldn't be surprising to you. Biden will recognize Guaido as Venezuela's leader, top diplomat says. Like this guy who had 2 failed coup attempts is who Biden is going to recognize as a leader. Now, Trump was also recognizing him as a leader, but then he started calling him a loser. He was calling him the Beto O'Rourke of Venezuela. That's how bad Juan Guaido was. And this is how the people of Venezuela would greet Guaido when he came back to Venezuela, when he came back to Caracas in September of 2020. Does this look like somebody that the country wants? Like, right? As soon as they come back to their country, this is how the people greet them. Again, this guy had 2 failed coup attempts. And the country just doesn't like him. Venezuela has a democratic process, and they didn't choose Guaido. They chose Maduro again. Also, this was an article that was published in July of 2020 by Leonardo Flores on The Gray Zone. He said Biden's vision for Venezuela is virtually indistinguishable from Trump's. Expect a continuation of sanctions on Venezuela, demonization of Maduro, and extreme efforts to try to get rid of Maduro so that they can have a plant there, a puppet for the U.S. that's going to do the bidding for the U.S. and its oil companies. Yeah, I reported on this article months ago, back when it had just came out like 6 months ago. The only difference between Biden and Trump that the article was saying was that Biden was for TPS, which is temporary protected status, which is an immigration policy that allows people from 10 specific countries affected by disasters to live and work in the U.S. Biden supports TPS for Venezuelans, while Trump allies have blocked it in the Senate, and Trump himself ended the program and has refused to issue it for Venezuelans. And then the other difference is the border wall, in which Trump wanted to use Venezuelan funds for the border wall, and Biden was not for that. Other than that, they're completely identical in how Biden and Trump wanted to take care of Venezuela. But let's go back to this article here. So it says U.S. President-elect Joe Biden's administration, now he is the president, inauguration just happened, he was just sworn in, will continue to recognize Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido as the South American country's president. Antony, so they misspelled his name, it's Antony, not Anthony. Antony Blinken, Biden's nominee for Secretary of State, said on Tuesday. Blinken told members of U.S. Senate that Biden would seek to more effectively target sanctions on the country. More effectively target sanctions. So we're going to continue this inhumane procedure of sanctioning that country, which leaves the millions of people that live there starving from lack of access to food. And then we put blame on Maduro, even though like there's studies that show that it's because of the U.S. sanctions on Venezuela why people are struggling in that country. So more effectively target. Like what that means is that they're gonna find more humanitarian excuses for why we need to sanction that country. And there's gonna be liberals that buy into it, and we're gonna have to be the ones to inform liberals about the truth. So the sanctions aim to oust President Nicolas Maduro, who retains control of the country. Blinken said the new administration will look at more humanitarian assistance to the country. How are you going to provide humanitarian assistance if you're sanctioning that country? That's diametrically opposed. Oh, we're gonna assist you humanitarianly, but we won't assist you humanitarianly because by sanctioning you, then we're not assisting you. It makes absolutely no sense. The United States, along with dozens of other countries, recognized Guaido, the leader of Venezuela's opposition-held National Assembly, as the country's president in January 2019, arguing Maduro's 2018 re-election was rigged. There is no evidence that shows that it was rigged. The Center for Economic and Policy Research showed that there was no rigging that happened in Venezuela and that the elections were legitimate. The elections in Venezuela are more legitimate than the ones in the US. Which you can't objectively look at the results of the US elections. And that's why we can't objectively say who actually won the elections, given the history of election fraud that we've had in this country, and the voting machines and who owns them, and the history of missing voting ballots, like all this other shady stuff that our country has had throughout our history when it comes to elections. We need an effective policy that can restore Venezuela to democracy, starting with free and fair elections, Blinken said. Again, they already have that. Their elections are more legitimate than ours. There's plenty of evidence that shows that. Guaido's push to oust Maduro, who has overseen a collapse in the once prosperous OPEC nation's economy and stands accused of corruption and human rights violations, has stalled. Maduro calls Guaido a U.S. puppet seeking to oust him in a coup. I mean, he literally is a U.S. puppet. I mean, he was trained here in the U.S. He went to George Washington University, and he's going to serve the U.S. fossil fuel companies here. His allies have expressed a desire to engage in negotiations with the Biden administration after years of tensions and escalating U.S. sanctions. Wow. And do you guys want to see more hypocrisy? Like we're calling Trump supporters and Trump, like they were trying to install a coup. Meanwhile, they're normalizing people like this guy here, Carlos Vecchio. They're normalizing this guy. So this is written by Anya Parampil on the Gray Zone. It's called Biden Inaugural Guest is Venezuelan Coup Leader Charged with Inciting Violent Assault on Government Building. So Anya writes, as Washington recovered from shocked and outrage caused by pyro-Trump hooligans storming the United States Congress, breaking windows, smashing doors, and intimidating police officers in order to push their way inside, a sense of pre-inaugural excitement began to sweep the nation's capital, who would be attending incoming President Joe Biden's inauguration on January 20th, scheduled to take place exactly 2 weeks following the Capitol riot. While heavily armed National Guard troops descended onto Washington streets to set up checkpoints, construct fences around government buildings, and establish their military presence, news about the upcoming swearing-in ceremony began to trickle out in the media. So it goes on to talk about all these like pop artists that showed up to perform for Biden. And it says, beyond entertainers and high-level federal officials, foreign dignitaries were invited to join a smaller than usual group of individuals permitted to witness the day's festivities. Among those dignitaries is Carlos Vecchio, a former Exxon lawyer who currently serves as U.S.-recognized interim president Juan Guaido's envoy in Washington. When the Trump administration initiated a coup against Venezuela's government in January of 2019, Vecchio became Guaido's ambassador and has risen to prominence as the de facto leader of a US-based exile lobby dedicated to toppling Venezuela's UN-recognized government. Look, the US is in full support, in plain sight, of this guy, Juan Guaido, and his goons who have a history of inciting violence to topple the democratically elected leader in Venezuela. So the Biden's team's decision to invite Vecchio was a disappointing sign to those hoping the new administration would break from Trump's failed and destructive policy of recognizing Guaido as Venezuela's leader. In the 2 years since Washington appointed a previously unknown opposition figure to lead its attempt at regime change, Guaido has failed to rally public support in Venezuela or gain control of any government ministry. Again, remember that video that I just showed you of like how people received him? Like the guy is hated there. And before that, there were polls that showed that people didn't even know who this guy is. And the US was trying to shove this guy down our throats. Again, so the article mentions how one of the reasons why Venezuela still has Maduro as its leader and why the US hasn't been able to succeed in coupping that country is because the military is loyal to Maduro. And that was largely thanks to his predecessor, Hugo Chavez, who was able to garner the loyalty of the military in Venezuela. So yeah, Anya goes on to mention how Vecchio's presence there was filled with irony. Because it says, in the days following the Capitol riot, Biden and his allies have denounced the violent takeover of Congress as an assault on democracy, with the incoming president himself declaring the rioters to be domestic, quote-unquote, domestic terrorists. Yet Carlos Vecchio, the Guaido ally with a fresh ticket to Biden's inauguration, is responsible for leading his own assault on his home country's democracy and is currently wanted in Venezuela for inciting a violent attack on the Attorney General's office in Caracas. Check out this video. This video shows the clear parallel with what Vecchio did and what they're accusing Donald Trump of doing, which is inciting violence for a quote-unquote coup on the nation's capital. Check this out.
Hermano, ¿se puede o no se puede?
Sí, se puede. This is from 2014.
Se escuche, ¿se puede o no se puede? Sí, se puede. Bueno, yo quisiera. Sí se puede. Sí se puede.
Sí se puede. Sí se puede. Sí se puede. His supporters. He's saying that we're going to fight to gain control of the country. And look at that. Opening the gate. Tearing it open.
We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved. Our country has had enough. We will not take it anymore, and that's what this is all about.
Like exactly the same thing what Vecchio was saying. We won't stand for this. The difference here is that the police was trying to stop the Wow. I mean, the parallel is just astounding. The irony here, it's just crazy. So it says Biden's, so the article goes on to say Biden's guest charged with inspiring a violent assault on Venezuela's public institutions. So on February 12, 2014, which is, that's what we saw in that video, right-wing opposition leader Leopoldo Lopez led a feverish rally of his supporters in the heart of Venezuela's capital, Caracas. For over a month, Lopez and his political allies had been holding demonstrations aimed at overthrowing newly elected President Nicolas Maduro, who came into office following snap elections held in the aftermath of Hugo Chavez's death. Carlos Vecchio, the corporate lawyer who went on to represent Juan Guaido in Washington, also spoke at the demonstration and stood loyally by Lopez's side as he delivered his incendiary speech calling for an angry march to the Attorney General's office and whipping the crowd into chants of "no fear, no fear." And then the crowd went ahead and started destroying property. The article goes on to say how there were 49 people that died. Yeah, the violent actions of Vecchio and his allies were hardly limited to the events of February 12, 2014. The chaotic demonstrations they led lasted until May of that year, resulting in the death of 49 people and roughly $10 billion in damage. Regime change rampages by Venezuela's opposition have featured assaults on journalists, the construction of barricades managed by vandals, and the burning to death of political opponents. So can you imagine if it was Donald Trump and his supporters that were building barricades around people's neighborhoods so that people can't leave? Or if Donald Trump, and which Anya brings up also, or if Donald Trump had hired a hitman to try to assassinate Joe Biden. It's crazy, right? But that's what these people did in Venezuela. It says, what if the Trump supporters had lit the Supreme Court on fire and bombed it from the air in a stolen military helicopter? And how would Democrats have reacted if Trump had contracted foreign mercenaries to capture or kill Biden? That's what the opposition to Maduro did. They were trying to assassinate him. It's crazy, right? It's crazy. But it's okay when it happens in other countries and when the US does it, but it's not okay when somebody does it to us. And it's like, we can't even think about it. Instead, we think of these idiots that like just walked into the Capitol with their like, the guy with the fur just like walking into the Capitol. We call that like a violent coup. A violent coup attempt, but we don't consider this a violent coup attempt. Instead, we continue to support these people. Man, this is unbelievable. And just expect more of that. Expect more support for Guaido or other leaders that the U.S. wants to plant in other countries so that they can do the bidding of the oligarchs here. And it's since we're more informed than the average person, we're gonna have to inform other people about this and call out this hypocrisy. It's very blatant. We have to call it out and be like, when people like a lot of these people out there that are calling what happened on January 6th like a violent coup attempt. I'm like, okay, well, what do you call this? What happened in Venezuela? Like, show them that part of Anya's article. And be like, this is who the Biden administration is supporting and recognizing as a leader. Somebody like Juan Guaido. So I'll leave you guys with that. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and stay informed.